Hello, Ryan Borden here, aka Loopline. In this video, we're going to cover the last step. So you had the program template file imported, you have the project template file imported, and we talked about kind of like the overview of what the whole settings in the program and this projects mean in the last video, the 26-minute one. And so in this video, we're going to talk about the actual project. I should mention you can duplicate these, so if you make more, keep the settings from project to project. And let's just look. So in the last one, I kind of went over everything. So I'm not really going to talk about scraping, filtering, checking, captcha schedule, or notes, because I've already talked about all that in multiple videos. Submission content is really where it's at as far as what's left. Let's talk about the settings down here just briefly. I like to leave them like this. Submission URL. This, if you check this box, it could potentially lower success a little bit, but you may have a reason to. You can read the tooltip there. Filter out comment forms. This improves accuracy if you leave this checked. It could possibly tiny bit lower success, maybe. I'm not really sure what this detection could fail means, but it's definitely a useful tool to have checked, because otherwise you might submit your message as a comment on a website and it'll just be stuck there forever. Retry to submit previously failed. Depending on how you run your projects, that could be useful. It doesn't actually help me, but I put it here because it may help some people. And then record website form fields. Unless you're doing debugging and trying to improve success rates on the actual forms, this is useless for you. And so you always want to use proxies when sending. So you got to make sure that's checked. And then, you want to make sure that they're private proxies, not public proxies, and you want to set up some proxies. I'm actually going to just do that so I can show you what it looks like. And so these are just generic proxies. These are actually public proxies that I just loaded in so you can see what's going on here. But you got to have some proxies loaded up. And so let's get out of that. So as we roll through here, the empty field, this is kind of like a robots field. On some forms, it'll say leave this blank if you're human, and robots or programs automatically try to fill everything, so they won't leave it blank. So this is telling website contact to leave those fields blank. So leave that alone. It's got to stay here at the top. You can move things up and down, but this particular field has got to stay at the top because of how things are processed. It doesn't work right if you put it at the bottom. So everything else you can move around. So if there's a field you don't need, like, I don't know, like website, like fax, you can move that down, whatever. But it's good to fill all these fields or have them be random, because sometimes they're required. And if you don't fill a required field, the form doesn't get submitted, which obviously is a bad thing. So first name, last name, pretty basic. You can go here and set it to random. By default it is, or you can double click this or click edit over here and it'll bring this up. Leave name, type, and identity alone unless you know what you're doing. That's how to fill. You can change that to self-defined or a random relevant element, like this would be last name, so you could do random last name here, for example. And so you can also set it to self-defined, which is where you can type something in, like Lisa, for example. Title, this would be, I don't know if this is actually title like Mr., Mrs., or title like CEO, President. I would just put something generic in here so it's filled like expert or whatever. Email, random email. And when you get your message, the whole point of this is to get leads, right? So you have to have a call to action. So that is usually either send me an email, or like reply to my message, or click on a link. Now you might want them to call a phone number, and that's fine too, but if you want them to reply to your email, then you got to put in a valid email address in here, because this is the email that they're going to reply to. So if you are getting them to direct to a website, you might just put in a random email here. I use fake emails, or emails that I don't actually check. They're real, but I don't check them, so that because I send everybody to a website as far as my bulk stuff. But I've also done a bunch of clients and tests where we get people to reply to emails, so put in a valid email. You don't want to use your day-to-day email, because you'll get a bunch of newsletters, and even though we're trying to avoid that down here with this setting, you'll still get some, and you'll also get a bunch of auto replies. So put in a new email address here that you make up for this, and then you can remove you can move replies from here to your day-to-day email address and reply. Phone number is pretty basic. Website, put your website in here. If you don't have a website, put in like Google or something so that at least the submission goes through. And your more address stuff, pretty basic, explanatory. County. If you don't have a county, put something in here. I don't know if all parts of the world have all parts of these addresses. So do random if you don't have something. Otherwise, just put something in here so that it works. And then subject and message, obviously, and country, I assume, is self-explanatory. Subject and message are the most important. We'll talk about that in a second. Newsletter, this is telling it to not sign you up for newsletters when possible, and this is, some forms want first name and last name, some just want name. These tokens here are going to grab whatever you put here and combine them together and take care of that field for you. And there's more tokens. You can use spin tags in messages and tokens, and you can click here for macro help. They call them macros, I call them tokens. It's all the same thing. And there's more help here anyways. So we go to subject. The way this works is you go to a website. If you're an SEO pro trying to sell SEO to a barber, and you go to the barber's website and you fill out the form and you want to send it to them, what happens is you fill out the form on their website and their website sends them an email with the information. So they receive your information as an email, usually. It can be otherwise, but like 99.9% of the time it's an email, right? So whatever you put here as the subject is going to come in the subject of their inbox. So you want to put something that's relevant. Don't just put nonsense here, because if you put nonsense, they're going to be like, that's spam, and they're not going to open that email, which means they don't get your message, which means they don't buy from you, and you can't help them. So put something good in there, and then for the message itself, pretty basic. You put in some content, usually of some sort, and then call to action, some sort of signature, and then opt out and address and stuff. I'll talk about that in a second. The content is whatever you need it to be, whether that you're going to volunteer your time to try to help them, or that they're whatever. There's a bunch of stuff Chase has tried, and I've tried tons of stuff since 2014. I've been doing this, and I have done tons of tests and found that in general, short is better. So 3 to 5 sentences is generally the sweet spot. It can be a little longer, but I've tested short spammy messages versus long, professional messages, and the short spammy message wins every time on the response rate versus the long message. So I would go with short. You can test it though, by all means, always test. The signature, the call to action is, reply to this email, go to a website, whatever. The signature is whatever. You don't have to put this elaborate, but I like to put different things at different times. Now, we get down here to the last bit here, and I just need to talk for half a second. I don't know where you live, and I don't know when you're going to be watching this. It's 2022 right now. Maybe it's 2027 by the time you watch this. So maybe something has changed, but in the members area, I have a lot of stuff on compliance, right? Because you're sending the contact form and they're receiving it as an email, it could fall under the compliance of the appropriate email law. In the USA, it's really easy. Canned spam is so easy. You just need to check off all the boxes and be compliant. I've also got information, and that's all in the members area. I've got information on GDPR for the EU and e-privacy for the EU. Those are also GDPR is super easy. And so at the end of the day, I like to be compliant, just because then if someone complains, people like to push hot buttons, and it's just a non-issue if you're compliant, because you're compliant, right? So why wouldn't you be? It's like, it's so easy. Let's just do it. So this is the opt-out. Can spam says you got to mark it as conspicuously saying that it's an advertisement, basically. So I put something like this. I change up the wording all the time. And then if someone replies to you that doesn't want to be marketed to, we don't want to market to them. So it's fine, leave them alone. Some people will never buy from an advertisement or an email that comes in. So don't try to sell to them, and that's fine. They don't want to be bothered, opt them out. But you got to opt out their domain. Remember, you're going to their website and sending it that way. But when it goes to them, it's an email. So if they reply to your email with a Gmail address, and this is another reason you got to put a valid email right up here. If you want to use an opt-out as them replying to you to opt out, then you need to put in a valid email here so you can opt people out. So just put in this token here, and it drops in their website. So like let's say it's bobthebarber.com. It'll put his website or her website, whose ever website it is, in here in the actual message. And then when they reply to you, you'll have it. That might not make sense now, but if you're going to do opt-outs as an email reply, some people aren't going to do opt-outs. And if you're not one of them, then just go ahead and do it, whatever you're going to do. But if you want to be compliant, then I would recommend dropping this token in here. So when they reply to you and say, hey, take my website out, you actually have their website. Otherwise, you might not have it. And if you do have, then all you got to do is go here when they reply, global filter, and add, enter bobthebarber.com. And away you go. And there it is. And so every time you go to submit, it's going to remove bobthebarber.com from your list, so you'll never message them again. Pretty easy. All right, so you have a message in there. What do you do now? Really easy. Right-click, import URLs from file, and select the file. So I selected a file, and it's asking me if you want to check that file against the global blacklist. So it's going to go through that list we just looked at and remove any domains. I'm going to hit yes. Yes is the default. So I'll pause it here while it does. It only takes just a few seconds. And we're done. It filtered out 345 URLs from the blacklist and then 87 URLs that were duplicates. And this is what's left. And it's going to bring them in here. We can see them down here. And this status will update as we go along. And we can see there's 749,000 in here. So now that you're there, all you gotta do is hit send message. And this is the little preview. I like to read this. This is so you can see samplesite.com. This is where we put in that token. And then when they reply, you'll be able to see their website. But this is a nice little quick read through to make sure there's no problems. Yes, continue, and then it's going to prepare the data, which will also take just a moment. Depends on your computer, your resources, the size of the list. 750,000 URLs is a pretty solid list size, so this might take 20 seconds or something, even though it says 6. All right, so we're just finishing up here, and then you can see it's burning through here, and we have some failed and some filtered and some sent, and it's just going crazy. Some of these failed. The reason it's so high is because of the proxies that I was loading in. Well, if you believe in being human, I said I was going to stop this, and instead of stopping this, I stopped the recording. So that was great. So anyways, it's been a sum total of about 45 seconds in my blender here. 45 seconds, and we've sent 147 messages. So you can contact hundreds of thousands of people while you sleep or eat or while you do other stuff, right? And the great thing is, if you go to Facebook or Google or whatever and you pay for ads and you get leads, they're still just leads, right? They are interested in perhaps looking at or buying what you have, but you still have to nurture them, sell them, etc. Take them down a funnel, get their name and email, give them a report, give them an audit, whatever. These are leads too. But these are, you don't have to pay for all these leads like you do with Facebook and Google per click. You're just getting hundreds of thousands of messages sent out, and you can do millions, obviously. I do a couple of million messages sent a day on average, and so spread across clients. So you're going to get all those leads in, and then you can sell to them just like you would for anything else. You can give them an audit from ShineRanker. You can use the ShineRanker tools to figure out what's wrong with their website and try to sell them on fixing those things. You can volunteer your time to get your foot in the door and then charge them for stuff later. You can do all kinds of stuff. The principles are the same for selling to them. This just gets you leads on high speed and without all of the work, and then you can do it over and over again, right? So you can take, obviously in the members area, you're going to get new contact forms, 2 million or 4 million, depending on what you sign up for, or whatever the current packages are at the time of this video, each month. So there you're going to get new ones, but then you also can redo them, right? So you can come in here, and all the ones that are failed, if you run it again, you can clear and reset the status, right? So you can go over here and reset status on all of them. You would select them all, and then after it selects them, just okay, then I'm just going to reset status, and now I can submit to all of them again. So you don't want to do that like 4 times a day or anything, but you can do this and then come back in 2 weeks and submit to them again, right? So that you can get in front of them again, because sometimes people are busy. Sometimes people are on vacation and they come back and their inbox is full. Sometimes they weren't ready. You have to catch them at the right time. So you can also remove everything and bring in a new list, right? So I always remove everything and bring in a new list because you're going to have more than one list in the members area anyways, and you might even break this list up into chunks, and so you might need to load the next chunk anyways. So one way or another, every 2 to 4 weeks or so, you can come back to these people and send them another message and see if they're interested. Obviously, one thing I would recommend is anybody that signs up with you or that expresses interest, whether they talk to you and say no or talk to you and say yes, you probably want to add them to your blacklist too, because those are people you actually talk to. The worst thing I think you could possibly do would be to have gotten a customer and then send them a message every 2 or 4 weeks asking them if they want to buy from you again. I don't know. I wouldn't like that if I was a customer. So probably add those people to your blacklist too. And that is it. That's how you can get leads on autopilot.